Welcome back, everybody. And today, hey, you know what? Remember I promised you I would take you through Canadian weather. Doesn't matter whether it's snowing, raining, sunshine. Well, here we have some nasty weather for the first time in some time. We've had a lot of sun, but I want to talk about when is that perfect time to retire. We all know that my perspective on this is the earlier the better. If you can afford it financially, absolutely do it when you can afford it, because that's ultimately you're going to live your best life, honestly. But you have to find things to do. However, it's not always in the cards. And so if it's not, when is that best time to retire? Well, I did a little reading this morning. I came across a little article about Canadians, for example, and it's a little different in every country. But in Canada, the most recent information that I came across was they're saying more and more Canadians now are taking the earliest qualifying retirement. In other words, when they get their Canadian pension plan benefits, which essentially is the pension that they cut from the government, which I know a lot of countries don't get such benefits, and that's unfortunate. But I will tell you, in Canada, the maximum benefit, if you qualify and you've done all the right things, checked all the right boxes, and certainly played all the right cards, is right now just over $1,300 per month. So it's not a whole lot of money. It's barely enough to buy the groceries for the month and maybe gas just to get to the grocery store. But basically, that's what it is. And so what they're saying now is apparently Canadians generally, not just me, at saying, you know, if you can do it at 50 or 53 or 55, that's the best time. But even Canadians have starting to elect it to take the earliest qualifying CPP or Canadian Pension Plan retirement package as early as possible, which is at the age of 60. Now, again, every country's different. Some country, we know Australia, somebody had mentioned there that 67 is the age where you start getting some benefits if you qualify. And every country's a little bit different. Of course, we also notice healthcare is a factor you have to think about. And I know people that have moved, Canadians that have moved down to the US, and the way they manage that is they lose their benefits because they set up business and they've literally relocated to the US and taken on private insurance. And that way they still get health care. They get quicker in, quicker out, better health care, really, arguably, for those that are aware of the Canadian policies and healthcare system. But what I've kind of been learning reading this article was that Canadians are electing. The vast majority of Canadians are electing to take CPP or their pension and retire as early as possible. And that's at 60 years of age, to a maximum of $1,300 a month, as mentioned. They said about 34% people polled would suggest that they want to retire and pull their CPP pension at 60. They said it was about 19% would say that 65 was the age, and only about 16% of those polled said that 70 was the right age to do it. And so not a lot of people are deciding to wait to the age of 70. Now, why would anybody wait that long to even grab their pension? Well, possibly tax deferrals. If they're making so much on, say, company pensions or other investments, you've got to spread that out so you're not getting hit so hard by the tax man. You want to make sure that you're under the radar. And so, again, I'm not here to talk about financial advice. I'm coming at it from a perspective of, the way people are feeling about this. And really, these are all indicators. Even though they say statistically, if you take your pension at 65, which is sort of the target number, even though early pension is 60 based on CPP, if you take it at 65, every year you wait goes up about 8.4% to a maximum. Every year you cut short is about 7.2% shaved off the bottom line. So in other words, if you take your pension at 60, you're actually giving up about 36%, allegedly, is what I'm reading and the information I have. And I'd like to hear more if anybody's got more information on that. I'm just kind of learning this game. But 36% of the benefits are gone if you take it early, which would be at age 60. So what is that, about a third of $1,100, $1,200, $400 off-ish? I'm going to say around there. So, that's painful, but people are coming at it from the same perspective that I've been sharing. A lot of it is Number one, first of all, we know there's been a lot of talk about Canadians and Albertans specifically talking about maybe revamping the pension plan and maybe going more localized. Alberta might break out of the main federal system. And so there's a little bit of nervous rhetoric around that. And a lot of places have their own, again, policies and sort of ideologies around that. But that's one thing that I found in this article. Another thing is a lot of people just aren't sure about the future in general, the economy, the instability. And while a lot of people say CPP is secure, nothing's secure in this world, and I think we saw that back in 2000. Everything is up in the air and everything is negotiable. And so that's why I really do believe that retiring as early as possible. So the pension's one aspect, but then there's the lifespan thing too that we talk about. We also talked about this the other day, right? 65 years, and then the average person only lives another year before they get chronically ill. That's heartbreaking, honestly. And I know so many people that went through that. They worked hard, they worked long, they kept putting off, and then they finally hit that 65, and then lo and behold, again, I mentioned this previous, a couple people I know, one individual basically got chronically ill, cancer, and he lasted another 2.5 years. And another gentleman didn't even quite make his 66th birthday. He retired at 65, and he died of a massive heart attack. I also got word that a relative here recently, just this week as a matter of fact, just passed away from a heart attack as well. And I believe he was around 60, 61. So it's so heartbreaking to me to see that people keep putting it off, not living life. And this is what is so devastating. And so that happens to be yet another reason why a lot of people are electing to take their pension early. It's primarily because they don't know what is expected for health. They don't know when health is going to decline. And a lot of people are feeling they just need to take advantage of these benefits. The sooner, the better, knowing full well that they are giving up as much as maybe $100,000 by cutting it short versus going full benefit in the whole entire duration of the time you might be drawing on your pension. So you're giving money back, but at the same token, you're earning it early on. And the other downside, like I said, tax deferral for those people that decide that are going to wait. And then all of a sudden you hit the end of the road. Now you have old age security. You might have still some RSPs left. If you haven't staged it right, now you can find yourself over that threshold and actually giving some of those benefits back to the government. And that's the last thing you want to do. You want to sort of level this out and stretch out your investments. And that's why a good financial planner is always worth their weight in gold, because they'll kind of tell you, and even a good accountant will show you how to sort of stretch that out, maybe draw on certain benefits initially, and then later on you draw from the government benefits, and then later on you top up with old age security and all these other things. But again, it's going to be different in the US as in Canada and Australia and Europe and Asia. It's different everywhere. So the key here is understand your system. And I can't speak to all of them, but understand your system. Talk to some people who are well vested, understand and have the knowledge in those areas. But again, this isn't about financial advice. This is literally about the idea that, people are starting to realize that, the writing's on the wall. They're nervous. They're scared about not living as long. I think we've seen the peak. In my personal opinion, what I've seen is, I think the boomer generation, if you call it that, my parents and that, were probably the last generation where I think they peaked in terms of life expectancy. Now, they say we continually climb, but even if the life expectancy rises, I do believe, in my own personal opinion, what I've been seeing is the quality of life is dropping drastically after the boomer generation, and largely because of fast food, obesity, industrial, irritants, all kinds of things in our system, stress in your job. Those are all factors that are going to take a major toll on your life and health. And even if the medical system keeps you stringing along and hanging in there, it's heartbreaking to see people carrying around oxygen tanks, going for their regular dialysis treatments, cancer treatments, dealing with heart problems, going under the knife for different surgeries. It's devastating to me, but it's happening, and it seems to be more and more and more of that. And so as a result, people are seeing that. They know what the writing on the wall is. So they're trying to get their benefits out of the system as quick as possible. And ideally, if you're anything like me, really retire as soon as possible. Because again, it's not just the absolute life expectancy, it's also the quality of life that you might be giving up these days. And so retiring at 50, 52, 53, like I'm retired at 53, I think gives you at least the majority fighting chance to look after yourself, reduce your stress because now that corporate world isn't bearing down on you, and also just enjoy more of those years in general where you're not working, you're not hustling the 9 to 5, and you're actually enjoying life as a whole. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts, everybody. What's your take? Where do you think is the sweet spot for retirement? I always say the earlier the better. I retired at 53, but what do you think is the sweet spot? Where do you believe the best age for retirement is? And honestly, for a combination of, grabbing your benefits as well, of course, for just general life experiences. Where do you think? I'd love to hear your comments. Please do drop a line and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.